Well, technology wants to be funny, I suppose. And this is actually my second attempt at today's podcast. And hopefully it goes well. My voice might be shot because I'd already recorded once, and then my microphone settings broke on me about 10 minutes in, and I didn't notice it broke. So we're doing this again, and I'm going to try to do a different form of it. My first video was like 50 minutes, and, did the typical checking the thing and going through the plot and characters and battles and stuff. My voice is shot, so I will definitely give it a go. And I'm doing this because I have a busy schedule with the NHL playoffs, and I'm working the hockey games at the Minnesota Wild Arena. So I kind of have to do these now, or I'm not going to have time in the next week or so, especially with my family coming up. So yeah, broken podcasts are fun. But hey, we might get a better podcast out of it because I'm angry and I'm more focused now. Anyway, today's podcast is about Metal Gear Solid. And like I said before, the initial setup was I would do the plot and characters first and talk about them. I have to completely scratch that and go fucking full bore into this and try to go full bore. And maybe this will be a better approach going forward rather than going over the characters and blah, 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 blah. So let's just fucking go. Anyway, back in the 90s, we had a lot of games that were really freaking good. Final Fantasy VII, Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64, Symphony of the Night. Personally, Breath of Fire 3 was one of my favorites. And yet, even on top of all of that, you still had Metal Gear Solid in 1998, I believe. It was either 97 or 98. And it was just so good. It was goofy and weird, but in a good way, because it introduced the world to tactical espionage action. Now, what does that mean? It means you can be stealthy or you can be gunplay. Don't try to be both because we suck at both. But be about 70% stealth, 30% gunplay, and you probably get. It's giving you a lot of tools to get out of having to fight gunplay. With good reason, because those first games and it's one of the things I would talk about in the other review was the mechanics were meh. But I'm not going to focus so much on the characters and the plot and all the fun junk because I did that already and I got to go kind of quick before my voice drops out. But that being said, I still do want to go over a few things. I think what I'm not going to do is run to the plot. I think anybody who's played Metal Gear or heard of Metal Gear knows the plot by now. Guy stuck in Shadow Moses, guy fights off nuclear terrorists, does some weird stuff, deals with some weird people, like one that's named after an anime convention back before, that was like normal. And then fights his brother, who's not quite his brother, but technically is his brother because Les Enfants Terribles, when he lives on through his arm. And wait, that's the other game. Anyway, there are good things about that story, and what I like the most about this story, and I think what is best is I will pick and choose certain things about it, is the groundedness of the story. The fact that you're living through this terrorist situation with this super spy who doesn't really like people. Metal Gear thrives on Solid Snake, or a variation of Snake, and it thrives on David Hayder's performance of Snake. I'm sure there's a Japanese actor, all that stuff. And again, I'm focusing on English actors. That's what I do. Anyway, so David Hayter, synonymous with Metal Gear, that's who we knew growing up. The Kiefer Sutherland thing happened, but for pretty much every other Metal Gear game, David Hayter was the guy. This is the role he's known for, the role he has perfected, and it works because this variation of Snake doesn't really care about people. He's thrust into a situation against his will because he's kind of kidnapped, basically. You can go through a tutorial section of, who are these people? Why are we doing this? Who are we fighting? And it goes really in depth into setting the scene of why he's in Shadow Moses against his will, basically. Even though he's kind of coerced into it, despite being kidnapped. I mean, he's not literally kidnapped, but that's essentially what he is. He's buck naked in a torture room talking for 20 minutes. And then he gets sent to Alaska to do a thing, in freezing cold, and even though they give you reasons, it's like you're not gonna go hungry or get cold or whatever because nanomachines, bro. It's a lonely existence. And regardless of the weird shit that he has to go through, Solid Snake is a grounded, people are shit, this world is shit, all of this is shit. I don't give a fuck about you, my legend. All this stuff makes no sense. If one of the phrases I remember was, if you fuck up your worm food. It's like, it's him in a nutshell. Is, I don't give a fuck about nuclear war. I don't give a fuck about your politics. I have to live and die with the fact that I might die. And if I die, I'm fucked. That's why I don't care about people. Which makes his love interest with Meryl, like, as good as Meryl is, it's kind of like, I see it, but I don't see it. I think Solid Snake benefits from being very philosophical despite his disposition, but also realizing that that cold detachment is what keeps him out of the issues of other people. Despite the fact that in most cutscenes he's able to kind of like wax poetic about the political climate or all the shit that he's seen, because he's lived through it. And really, Metal Gear survives on Solid Snake and the bosses he fights. And yes, you have great, colorful cast of characters, and the Colonel, Naomi Hunter. They get a lot of good story bits, and I think what's cool is the voice actors that they chose for this: David Hayder, Jennifer Hale, Cam Clark, Paul Adeling, Kim My Guest. Just murderer's row of great actors from those cartoon days that we had growing up. It's like, oh my god, they're doing this, especially in a time where honestly the voice acting was spotty. Like, I've talked before about how anime and video games back in the 90s were, voice acting was hit and miss. And even today, you get a lot of people whining about it. But back then, oof, you're lucky to have had Evangelion, much less Metal Gear Solid. And, the best you could hope for at the time was Symphony of the Night. And I've said my piece about Symphony of the Night. Darkling, I smell your blood. You are a vampire? Like, yeah, for every good line, the miserable little pile of secrets you who get shit like that. Metal Gear totally wipes the floor with any voice acting for like 5 or 10 years. As much as I like stuff like Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy 12, I mean, their acting is good, I guess. But Metal Gear, every game in that franchise is great when it comes to voice acting. And it really builds the bosses, and it builds the characters that you're fighting. And the bosses are amazing. You get to learn so much about these bosses. You're going through all these areas trying to do all these sneaky shit with all these fucking weapons and armor and upgrades and shit at your disposal. Pistols, high-end firearms. You get 2 types of rocket launchers. You get multiple grenades, one that does this thing and then another that does this thing. Remote controlled mines. You get magazines to distract things. You can run around in a fucking cardboard box. You can do all this crazy cool stealth shit. And it's not really apparent until later in the harder difficulties how stealthy you have to be to survive an endless wave of guys once you get kidnapped. And Metal Gear does a great job of forcing you into stealth without forcing you to do stealth. What I mean is, there are certain situations where it is a stealth mechanic and you're forced into a situation where you have to be stealthy and survive the section, or you get brought back to the middle. Most often with this, it's like if you saved quick enough, you're fine. But you're allowed to fuck up and hide. You still have to hide in a good spot, but you have to hide. But you're given enough gunplay to survive the stealth. Other games would force you into the gunplay or force you into stealth. Metal Gear does a good job of doing both. And what contrasts that and what benefits you is the fact that the bosses are so unique. The groundedness of fighting this military force is balanced out by the complete bonkers cuckoo's nest of these boss fights. A guy who has a raven on his head, who's a Native American shaman. You've got this fucking guy with guns who ricochets stuff off the building. You've got a sniper lady. You've got you've got this guy who can turn into anything by copying their blood or eating whatever it is, fucking vampire or something. Like he eats their blood or some shit. Liquid Snake, who won't fucking die. He's perfect final boss material. And then you get Psycho Mantis. Fucking Psycho Mantis. It's fucking great. The amount of cool shit that they let you do with Psycho Mantis is beyond the pale. Hideo Kojima, in all his glory, gets a picture of himself and he gets the Hideo screen. But then you have to figure out how to get through this whole boss fight, because you can do it with attrition by firing blindly, or you can do the controller trick, something I don't think I've ever seen any other game have the balls to do. The other thing that I think the game succeeds at as far as these bosses is giving them a backstory after you've destroyed them, and in some cases on their deathbed. The Metal Gear soliloquy, I think, is the boss soliloquy is something that if it's a final boss, you'll see it in movies and shit, but most often with villains, you'll get the mid-character sequence where they're talking to each other and they give you their big fucking plot. They give you their big fucking plot after you fought them once or twice, and sometimes with their dying breath, and then Snake waxes poetic with them, and it's not a sympathetic scene because these people are villains, but they give you the reason as to why they're so fucked up. And outside of the weirdness of it, it's still a grounded experience. These people are still trying to be murderers and trying to be terrorists, and the game does a good job. And I don't know if I like Metal Gear when it's trying to be too campy or too on the nose. I'll give an instance. The torture sequence, really harrowing, because you only get one shot at it. If you lose your health bar, you die and you can't continue. So you either have to give up and forego someone's life, or survive it all, run away, and then you get a different item. I usually go for the stealth camo, but that's just me. But the boss fights are tiered differently than the battles or the normal combat sections, because all that stealth stuff and all that different weapons and stuff, you get to fight a goddamn tank and throw grenades at it, but then you fight a guy with psychic abilities throwing vases and shit across the screen, but then you're fighting a sniper in a sniper battle and checking your medication so you can get the perfect shot. Everything's different. Everything feels different. And again, in most cases, this game isn't completely, oh my god, I'm fucking bonkers right now. It doesn't take until the second game with I live on through this arm, it's that sort of fucking weirdness, or the guy who shoots bees, like a bee grenade at you in the third game, a guy made of electricity, this core of basically Metal Gear Solid 4, these boss fights with these women in these suits who basically are like mentally fucked in the head, and when you beat them you go into this like pseudo like porno thing with a camera, and you can do that stuff. It's dumb. The dumb stuff in Metal Gear is endearing, but you can't escape the dumb sometimes. But at least in Metal Gear 2, like Metal Gear 1, it's toned down enough that it feels like, okay, I can buy it, but I'm not a suspension of disbelief. Like, I've talked about suspension of disbelief before. And in movies and in video games or wrestling or whatever, a TV show, there's a limit to the amount of stupid or amount of stuff that you can do. And I've heard it said that the best way to make a character is make a character that sticks to their morals, so that when they change, they still fit the narrative that they're exposing. They're not trying to swerve you. It's the WWE thing where we have this undead zombie. Okay, he's an undead zombie guy. He makes no absolute sense in the grand scheme of things. He's the Psycho Mantis, and yet the Undertaker is a guy, but you can buy it because they are so committed to the role, or as long as they don't do stupid shit like going to, Katie Vick, necrophilia angles and weird shit like that. Metal Gear is the Katie Vick kind of thing. Metal Gear Solid is the, oh my god, I'm just the undead zombie killing dudes. There's a level of stupid, and then there's a level of, oh my god, shut up, this is dumb. Metal Gear Solid 2 to a lesser extent 3, but it has its moments. 4, they just completely go ridiculous with it because Kojima has no filter. In this game, he still is a little bit grounded. And despite the psychokinetic and weird shit, and the super baby method, and the les enfants terribles, and all that shit, and the guy naming himself after an anime convention, there's still a level of groundedness. That being said, Metal Gear Solid isn't without its problems, and that's true whether you play the original or the Twin Snakes version. Metal Gear Solid frustrates me on occasion when it doesn't let you stealth your way out of a situation, but it forces you to make a perfect situation happen. I'll give you an example. There's a spot in the first building right before you fight the tank where you have to use your cigarettes to light these infrared lasers. If you don't light them properly, if you don't stand in the right spot, you trigger the thing, you die. And you wait an insufferably long amount of time getting out of it. Instead of, say, okay, I triggered the thing, let me put on my gas mask. You get the gas mask early, maybe, and the guys realize you're not dying quick enough. Well, okay, here's 4 or 5 guards. We'll have you fight 4 or 5 guards, and then they'll try to open. Like, they come from the other side, from the Claymore minefield or whatever. They come from the tanker. They come from the tank. The guys open up the other door, and you fight like a wave of 5 dudes with heavy guns and armor while the gas mask is going on, the gas stuff. So if Snake is able to fight off all the gas and fight off all the dudes, you can run out the door that has just been opened. Rather than, you trip the wire, you're dead. Something like that. The other instance I remember was the final area. There was a Terminator-esque pit of lava, and this revolving elevator cable thing would revolve from back and forth, and you either had to blow it up and knock it off the pillar and alert some guards, or you had to duck underneath it while holding a button, usually the left analog stick, and if your aim is off or you get hit by the thing, you're dead. Metal Gear usually is good at giving you a way out of situations, but I don't like it when they give you instances where you instantly die, because it's taking you back into the you have to be perfect or you die scenario. It's the QTE cinematic you're dead thing. I like that Metal Gear gives you options to get out of scenarios, but when they give you the, you're dead, it's like, it's kind of frustrating. Twin Snakes doesn't do much better, but we'll stick with the original. More so the controls than anything else. The fact that you're trying to sneak around a place with some security cameras, but you can't really duck and punt. You can't see a security camera and then shoot it. You have to sneak around a security camera, sneak around it, and then still be quiet and on the ground to avoid the guards from hitting you. That's a cool mechanic. But in the second game, and in Twin Snakes, you can use first-person view to shoot them out. So you're not limited to chaff grenades and stuff like that. So little dumb things. Despite all of the versatility at play, you're still kind of stuck with a lot of GUI. And it is resolved using the Metal Gear Solid 2, the Twin Snakes version, but the Twin Snakes version has its own issues. I talked a lot about the voice acting in Metal Gear. It's great. What I also like is that the characters feel like they're trying to be different characters. Liquid Snake is this half British, half African sounding guy who's chewing up scenery. You have Revolver Ocelot, sounds like he's kind of Russian, but not quite Russian, but just very gruff and Western type. You have people trying to be Russians or South Africans or Chinese. In the second version, in the GameCube version, they drop all pretense and they're just the people acting as people. And, as much as I like these actors, you have Kim, my guest, being, Mei Ling. And instead of this Chinese person, quoting Shakespeare or quoting Sun Tzu or something like that, she's Subaru from Dot Hack Sign. It's the same voice actress. And it's like, I kind of liked you when you had whether it was a good accent or not, I could at least tell you were trying to do an accent. In the second game, they didn't really have them do any accents, which is kind of like, well, that's kind of crap. I really like the accent. So you're getting that. Twin Snakes also has the kind of dumb suspension of disbelief of Solid Snake being able to do a lot of shit. Like, there's 3 specific instances, or 4, I remember. First one, DARPA chief, he gets caught in a corner. He just hides behind the guard and hides behind the door. In the Twin Snakes version, he's scaling the wall like Spider-Man. There's a tank where he dodge rolls and cartwheels his way, and then he throws a fucking grenade down the pipe of the tank or whatever. There's a torture scene where Revolver Ocelot is saying, hey, don't use the turbo controller and whatever, I'll know. And then you see the guy turning to the camera, and Snake turns to the camera and just don't do it, you know? And then just some other stupid little things like fighting the Hind D and it becoming a John Woo film. It's fun, but it's stupid. It becomes jumping the shark territory, which I don't like. And again, it's part of me being older than I used to be, so obviously I have less of a tolerance for bullshit, and Metal Gear gets away with stupid shit. This is a Hideo Kojima thing we're talking about. He thrives on having this endless creativity, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. He has an endless creativity, and it shines through. Some of the stuff they couldn't do, and they can't do, because he's just an endless idea. The amount of codec stuff that you have at your disposal to learn about these characters or learn about these weapons or items or bosses, the amount of stuff he wants to fit into these games cannot be understated. So there's that level of weirdness in there. And again, the voice acting is great. I like the fact that you're not stuck in full stealth or full gunplay. You have a little bit of both. You still should be stealthy, but it's not perfect because the mechanics of the game still kind of let it down a little bit. You know, the insta-death spots kind of suck. But the allure of being in this frozen fuck-off wasteland with these people that are trying to kill you with a grounded character who doesn't want to be there, but is left to his own devices because he has no choice, because they took him from his home and said, you're doing this whether you like it or not. And he's played for a fool through the entire storyline. So little things like that. So even though some of the stupid, like, oh my god, Liquid Snake doesn't fucking die despite blowing up in a fucking military tank, you know, this Metal Gear Rex thing, he blows up in that. Then he goes on a 20-minute rant about his whole fucking backstory, about the Les Enfants Terribles project. You know, that makes god-awful sense, but they, you know, again, they try. I'll give them that. They try. The super baby method and the asymmetry stuff, he is talking poetic for years. You know, that sort of thing. Then he falls off Metal Gear. Then he gets shot at by 20 or 30 fucking machine gun shots, doesn't die in a high-speed chase out of this fucking bunker, but only dies because of an in-game mechanic, because of a virus that the fucks die, you know, and of course the whole, you know, second game, the I now live on through this arm, you know, that it's not perfect. You have to get through some of the weirdness because Metal Gear Solid is trying to be a movie. A very disturbing, strange movie with weird shit, but it is trying to be the closest thing to a movie that a game had been at that point. Not a movie tie-in game, a movie game, you know. And Kojima loves himself some movies, and he loves himself what is a game but an interactive movie kind of thing. Is it perfect? No. Far from it. Metal Gear is not a perfect franchise at all. But for what it achieved in 1998 and still holds up fairly well despite its mechanics, again, there are some foibles. But if you get lost in the stupid, if you get lost in the voice acting that is taking itself as seriously as it can, in these characters that are as committed to their cause as they can, it can drive you. And it still does to this day. Like, Metal Gear Solid drives me to like it, despite some of the mechanics being god awful by today's standards, by the graphics being dog shit. You know, Solid Snake basically being plastered face on a cardboard body. You know, looking like Cloud and a bender. You know, it's not perfect. And even by PS2, 3 years later, the jump from this game to Metal Gear Solid 2, mechanics-wise, visuals-wise, character-wise, all that shit, it still holds a place because it was the first to do it. Nobody really talks about Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 and Solid Snake and all. I mean, they still exist as kind of a thing. But Metal Gear Solid, when it came out, was a big fucking deal. And it's still a big deal to this day. So many people reference Metal Gear. That kept you waiting, huh? The I live on through this arm. The crazy other bullshit that happens. A cyborg ninja. A guy named after an Otacon, you know, all this weird shit that doesn't sound so stupid today, but on reflection is stupid. But it doesn't take itself so seriously. And yet, for as dumb as it is, still maintains a level of gravitas that some of the other games just don't do. I still think Metal Gear Solid is a well-rounded game and a well-polished game despite a lot of the rough edges, and it still holds up. And I'm glad whenever I get to watch footage of it or replay it, watch somebody play it for the first time, stuff like that. It's a unique whole experience unto itself. It's not like any other stealth game. It's not trying to be any other stealth game. It's trying to be a game, a movie, a video game movie with voice acting that is on par with any of the best you'll ever hear in any game or any movie or anything. It's cool. It's great. You know, there are some great moments tucked away in Metal Gear that stand the test of time if you can get past some of the stupid. And even then, you can shut your brain off and be like, oh my god, this is so fucking ridiculous. I love it. When you start getting the Psycho Mantis fight, or you start seeing Marrow in her underwear, or you start seeing really stupid shit, you know, it's like, it's Metal Gear. It's a Kojima thing. It works. It's great. And talking about it and talking about, you know, when we get to the other games, like, they can't hold a candle to that first one because it was the first one. I think as games, as narratives, 3 is better. Bar none. 2 and 4 are really stupid and kind of rely on having the knowledge of the first and the third games, you know, or having a legacy look to them. I think Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 3 are good at, you don't know a damn thing about Metal Gear? Well, it would be nice to know, but you don't have to know them. We're trying something different. Have fun with it. And at the end of the day, you just want a game to be fun. And Metal Gear Solid is fun. It's not a perfect game, because there's never a perfect game, as I always say, but it is a fun game. But that will do it for me. Hopefully this turns out well, despite the fact that my voice is kind of shot, and I'm doing this about half the time as the other one, so I'm not expanding on nearly as much stuff as Metal Gear. But hey, good 30 minutes, I guess. Next week will be Emma, a Victorian Romance. Nice little romance comedy set in England, you know, the old school Victorian age kind of thing. I've decided, because of the NHL playoffs going into the Wild's favor, I'm probably going to be playing too much or going to too many fucking shifts at work at the arena to do a guest spot for Final Fantasy IV. So I'll shelve that for now and focus on Legend of Mana. If it changes, it changes by then. I'll record it then. But I will get to Final Fantasy IV with a guest. We've been talking about it, and we're going to do it eventually. So we'll get to that. For now, we'll just review a game I just beat on the channel, Legend of Mana. And then after that, we'll keep doing the whole Victorian anime kind of thing with Shadow's House. Nice little newer show. It's got its own unique mechanics. It's not perfect. It's a little on the strange side, but it's also nice and cute still. I would have wished it was kind of more strange than it actually is. But as far as a premise, it's a unique premise, if nothing else. But that'll be our next few weeks. I also want to mention that I'm in the process, or have already started, putting these videos on a second channel known as Strife Sanctum. I did that because I'm doubling up on my Yakuza videos until that finishes, and I'm concerned that even though more people are seeing all my stuff because they're one channel, people who want to listen to the reviews are being dogged down and probably getting notifications of like Yakuza episode 30, Yakuza episode 25, Yakuza, blah, blah, 2 or 3 episodes all at once. And then you wait for this. If it's a second channel, now you have, okay, I'm just here for the games. I'll get notified, once or twice a day for the games, but I'm only notified once a week for these. So they end up becoming more of an experience. So I think going forward, these will be set in their own channel. I think the boxer videos are my best performing ones by far, but I think I could put them on both channels because they are just once a month. So the boxer stuff's not going anywhere. But as far as a second channel, I have a link to that on my Discords and all that other stuff if you can't find it. If not, I'll post that in this video when it comes out, or in subsequent Strife Sanctum videos going forward, because that's what I'm going to use as my weekly upload channel, or my longer term uploads, so that my gameplay videos kind of stay where they are, and then these can kind of be their own, okay, I'm doing them once a week, let's just do them once a week, we're done kind of thing. So hopefully that's become a thing, and if you like both types of content, then feel free to subscribe to both. I think most people are going to subscribe to both, but at the same time, you're not notified of everything unless you want to be. So people who are here for this kind of stuff, that's great. If you're here for the gaming stuff, that's also cool. It means that I'm doing something useful. But that'll do it for me. I just wanted to get that out of the way, so subscribe to my stuff if you haven't, or let other people know it. Or if you like it, great. I'm doing my shells now because I'm almost done. But hopefully, my voice is completely fucking shot, and I'm hoping that this video finally fucking works so I don't have to record it a third time. So that'll do it for me. Citizen Strife, signing off.